There were 5 candidates this morning. One is Theresa May. 2 others are now supporting Theresa May. Can anyone stop Theresa May?
I'll be lending my wholehearted support to Theresa May, who is overwhelmingly in the best position to be the next Prime Minister and the leader of the Conservative Party.
I've decided to give my support to Theresa May. I intend to work closely with her to campaign for her, and I'm sure she'll be a very fine Prime Minister of this country.
There is still a battle of the Brexiteers for second place and a chance to appeal to Tory party members, but we'll ask if it's futile given Theresa May's lead at Westminster. Also tonight, how Brexit is hitting universities.
Since the referendum result, of the 12 projects that we have people working on for submission for an end of August deadlines, on 4 of those projects, researchers in other European countries have said that they no longer feel that the UK should be a partner because they don't have confidence in what the future is going to hold.
And in a Baghdad suburb, they've counted 175 dead from an ISIS car bomb. In Westminster, they're about to publish the Chilcot report.
Will this report bring security back? Or bring back someone who died from a car bomb? Or a widow who lost her husband or lost her kids? No, we'll do nothing.
Hello, it's too early to tell you who our new Prime Minister is, but we did learn today that it's not going to be Liam Fox. He was eliminated in the first round of the leadership election. Stephen Crabb then withdrew, so it won't be him. But both of them gave their backing to Theresa May, who was already the runaway leader with half of Tory MPs backing her. But at this stage, the race for second place is still open. The battle of the Brexiteers to be Theresa May's rival is between Andrea Leadsom and Michael Gove. It's more exciting than Wimbledon, and there's now one round on Thursday before it goes to an audience vote. Our political editor, Nick Watt, is with me. Nick, just take us through the drama of the evening.
Well, as you were saying, a decisive win for Theresa May. There are 165 votes for her, which is curiously the exact number of Conservative MPs elected in 1997 when she was first elected to Parliament. But Andrea Leadsom, not even a member of the Cabinet, the Brexiteer, 66, higher than expected. That is a serious performance. But let's not forget Michael Gove. He got 48 votes, and that was higher than expected. The Work and Pensions Secretary, Stephen Crabb, did OK, 34 votes, and in final 5th place, there's Liam Fox on 16 votes, and he came last, so sorry, Liam, you're out of the contest. But shortly after he was formally eliminated, Stephen Crabb, as you said, who was still in the contest, he decided to go and he endorsed Theresa May. But the really significant endorsement for Theresa May was Liam Fox, a prominent Brexiteer, and he said he will travel the country with her, which will help her because she could be up against one of those 2 Brexiteers.
Now, I mean, you look at those figures and the endorsement of MPs, and I know it's not the MPs who choose, but it's got to be Theresa May, doesn't it?
Well, on paper, Theresa May is untouchable, but she is nervous about Andrea Leadsom. I was talking to one of her cabinet supporters, and this person said to me, look, Andrea Leadsom is fresh. She was in the television debate. She may be very, very popular with the membership. And this cabinet minister said maybe Theresa May will do so well on Thursday that perhaps the others will stand down. But that is not the official Theresa May position. The official Theresa May position is I want this contest to go the full course. I want to face the country because I want a proper mandate.
OK, so what is going to happen now? What happens on Thursday?
Well, what is going to happen officially is Theresa May is going to shore up her support. But there's a bit of Machiavellian thinking going on. Perhaps because she's so far ahead, she could perhaps lend 30 votes to Michael Gove. That would then knock Andrea Leadsom out of the contest, and Theresa May would be maybe not certain about beating Andrea Leadsom, but would be very certain about beating Michael Gove. But Theresa May, I'm not in favour of tactical voting, so that's not the official position. And let's not forget Michael Gove. He does think he's a very serious contender, and he thinks Andrea Leadsom has 2 weaknesses. Weakness number 1 is that she didn't have a great performance in front of the 1922 last night. And weakness number 2 is her stellar City CV. Is it that stellar?
Nick, thank you very much indeed. Well, earlier in the day, there was a flurry of excitement thanks to a candid assessment of the leading candidates from Ken Clarke, caught on a Sky microphone. Many were wondering if it was actually right to air the comments, as he was apparently unaware he was being recorded, but, well, it just turned out to be too good for broadcasters not to run it.
I think with Michael as Prime Minister, we'd go to war with at least 3 countries at once. He did us all a favour by getting rid of Boris, who just... the idea of Boris as Prime Minister is ridiculous.
That could have happened.
I don't think either Andrea Leadsom or Boris Johnson actually in favour of leaving the European Union. Teresa's a bloody difficult woman, but you and I work for Margaret Thatcher.
This is the template.
Ken Clarke's view. Well, joining me now are 2 other Conservative MPs who I hope will be equally candid. David Davis, the former Shadow Home Secretary, who is supporting Theresa May, and Tim Lawton, who is running Andrea Leadsom's campaign.
You'll have to catch us in the green room afterwards, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we should probably
take the microphones off.
Let's just start on this issue of whether Theresa May is unassailable. I mean, Tim Lawton, could you imagine a coronation in which Theresa May is too far ahead in MP votes?
Absolutely not. The MP's role is an advisory role, and it's up to our membership up and down the country to decide the final candidate who becomes leader, who then becomes Prime Minister. The membership will feel cheated if we deny them that choice, and particularly if we deny them the choice of having a Brexiteer and a Remainer, given that the party in the country we know is largely Brexiteer.
I mean, but David Davis, isn't there a problem? I mean, if 200 MPs or 230 MPs support Theresa May and the next candidate gets, vastly less than that, 70... I mean, what happens?
Tim is right.
The MPs are then having a candidate foisted on them. That's like, I don't know, I can't think of a parallel.
Elections like referenda have rules, and our rules are that the MPs put up the 2 candidates and the party chooses. Now, the party may take into account what the MPs do, but actually it's down to the party at the end of the day. If they choose to elect somebody other than Theresa, that's their choice.
So David knows.
And so,
I remember that process.
But hang on, so you would be happy and you would serve under Andrea Leadsom even if she was way behind Theresa May in MP vote?
Look, I mean, the outcome is the outcome. The outcome, yes, absolutely.
No, but we have a parliamentary sovereignty. I mean, it's the MPs who choose the Prime Minister. It's not Conservative Party members.
On this subject, the picking of the party leader, and therefore, in this case, the Prime Minister, it's down to the party members of the country.
Right. Are you nervous about tactical voting on Thursday, Tim? Because I know a lot of Andrea supporters do seem to worry that there may be some of that.
Yeah, this, I think, is my 4th leadership competition. I've been in Parliament the same time as Theresa May for 19 years, and in the past there have been a few hints that some of our colleagues have not been entirely upfront about who they are supporting. I think that will be...
In this straightforward electorate?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Our wonderful colleagues may actually not do something that they've said they would do, and there's a lot of shenanigans going on, and I do think that the membership in the country would feel cheated if they did not have Theresa and Andrea. Those 2 between them got 70%. There is a certain niceness and neatness about having an all-women shortlist that actually is genuine, hasn't been gerrymandered, by 2 strong women candidates, one from Leave, one from Remain, actually 2 candidates who both went to state school. This is something new for the Tory party. It will be a really good process in what changes are coming about in the Tory party as well.
Are you suggesting that if Michael Gove pips Andrea Leadsom to the second-place post on Thursday, are you suggesting that would probably be a result of tactical voting rather than MPs making a straightforward choice?
Well, we think that Michael got a few more votes than we might have expected him to today. We were predicting for Andrea 65 votes. She got 66, so we've had to shoot our chief whip who gave us the wrong estimate. And those are genuine people who back Andrea because they believe in Andrea, the fresh approach that she's got, the experience she's got outside of Parliament. So we're going to increase those votes by people who are coming from Liam and from Stephen Crabb, but also actually from people who have backed Theresa because they gave Theresa their backing before Andrea came into the campaign. She wasn't in the campaign 5 days ago. I mean, to go from 0 to 66, which has doubled the predictions in the papers this morning, is no mean feat, and momentum is there.
I repeat the question. If Michael Gove beats Andrea Leadsom on Thursday, would you be saying that is almost certainly the result of some kind of tactical voting rather than honest voting?
I think there will be a bit of a steward's inquiry about where those extra votes came from, frankly, but democracy is democracy.
Is there going to be some tactical voting, David Davis?
Just take it from the point of view.
Of course there can be.
Of course, this is a quote sophisticated electorate, but there's no guidance from us. I mean, look, just think of it in these terms. Let's imagine that there are 35 votes in play. So Theresa could go to 200 votes, right? or she could give the 35 votes to somebody else in order to switch around. Why would we do that? Firstly,
it's much easier to beat Michael Gove than to beat Andrea Leadsom, as you well know.
I don't entirely agree with that, to be honest. But actually, not having 200 votes, which is the other alternative, is a much better outcome. Theresa is the unity candidate. She's pulled together Liam Fox and Stephen Crabb, me, not people you'd necessarily expect, and the purpose is to unify the Tory party, unify the country. She wants the biggest vote she can get. She's not going to give votes to anybody else. It's bonkers, frankly.
Yeah. No, well, just out of interest, one of the things that everyone has said about reading the view of the electorate in the referendum is there was an anti-establishment vote.
Yeah.
People were looking for someone who was different. I just wonder whether either of you have got a candidate who is that. I mean, let's start with you, Tim. Andrea Leadsom, an investment banker, city worker. I think she went to Warwick. She was a member of a black-tie dining club called the Patricians. You were a member of it as well, I think.
I was talking about this because it was one of the papers. We never remember that. Apparently, it dined at hotels in Leamington Spa. The only time I dined at the hotel in Leamington Spa was my grandma came up for the weekend and took me out for dinner. David was at Warwick University. I was at Warwick University. Andrea Leadsom was at Warwick University. So we've all got that in common.
There was no dining club called the Patricians?
I was not part of any dining club called the Patricians. Andrea was not part of any dining club. We are really mystified.
And to be fair, Warwick is a very good university, but it's not perhaps the most blue chip.
Is it fair to say? Is it fair to say that
but so what anyway?
An investment banker is the candidate?
She was an investment banker. She worked in fund management. She worked in financial industry in the city, in which she was widely respected, in which she ran teams of 300, in which she was involved during financial crisis in 2008, working alongside Eddie George. She's seen turbulent times and she's seen good times. She has run businesses in the real world for 25 years before she came into Parliament and started getting politics. And there's a notion that the only experience you can get is inside politics. Well, she got a hell of a load. She has more experience outside of politics than any of the contenders. She has been an MP for more than 6 years. David Cameron was only an MP for 4 years when he became leader of the party. He was never a minister before he became leader. She is a highly respected,
your candidate
successful minister.
In office for so many years and associated with all sorts of failures that were associated with the defeat of the campaign, the referendum campaign on whose side she was.
Well, actually, she was as you said, in office. She was actually in the most difficult job in government, the one that kills people, in being Home Secretary. I mean, when I was Shadow Home Secretary for 5 years, I had 4 Home Secretaries opposite me. You know? She did the job for 6 years. It's a record in modern times, you know. And she was formidable. I mean, things like the negotiation with Jordan over Abu Qatada, a whole series of things she did, which were incredibly important. And that's why she got so many votes, frankly, today. It's because they see a track record, a very tough lady who knows what she's doing, decisive, competent, capable.
I think we've got your answers on the kind of establishment credentials of your candidates. Look, let's just talk about the Brexit positions. This is really key. Do you think Brexiteers, Tim, can trust Theresa May?
I don't think there's a problem about trust, but I just think that if we are going to have a Prime Minister who we need to negotiate the most important settlement that we have ever faced in Parliament, you need to have somebody who was absolutely committed to the cause, well-researched in that cause, showed passion for that cause during the referendum, stuck their neck out on the block as a minister for that cause, and knows how to negotiate. All of those boxes are ticked by Andrea Leadsom.
The issue is not whether you voted for Brexit, it's whether you can deliver Brexit. It's going to be one of the most sophisticated negotiations we've ever seen. You're quite right. Not just us, I think the generation before us too. Sure. And it's going to require a very competent, capable person, somebody who can look Angela Merkel in the eye, look Hollande in the eye, somebody who carries that gravitas, but also has the intellect to do it. And today, I mean, I don't want to pick fights with Tim, but, you know, up until today, or up until yesterday, Andrea's view was, well, we should go straight to Article 50, trigger the negotiation immediately.
No, she's not. She's not.
Well, she's changed the position.
And have you looked Andrea in the eye? She is a tough nut. She's done negotiation. She's dealt with foreign business people. She's dealt with foreign politicians in her role as Energy Minister and City Minister. She's a no-nonsense, fresh start in politics, and that's what we need. And I'm afraid...
This is much bigger than that. This is much bigger than that.
Theresa has been
heads of state issue.
Theresa has been
a really, really big argument that's going to take place, and it's one which, you know, you're going to have to carry off not just by experience of 1 or 2 energy negotiations, but a huge experience in government, and
Okay.
that's what Theresa brings to
Theresa
this.
has got a track record of longevity in the Home Office. When it comes to delivering the best deal for British people coming out of Europe, Theresa May, Andrea will.
We're going to leave it there.
Was that a slogan?
Boom, boom.
Laugh of derision there. Yeah. Thank you both very much. Before the referendum, British universities were clear that they wanted Britain to remain in the EU. Now, of course, they're having to assess how Brexit will affect them. The Russell Group of top-ranked research universities issued a reassuring statement today. We're just as open and welcoming to students, staff and ideas as we were before the referendum, they said, putting a brave face on it. But there are deep concerns out there. Our policy editor, Chris Cook, went to the university city of Sheffield, where one vice-chancellor revealed that his institution is already feeling shockwaves from the referendum.
Sheffield was a major shock on referendum night. A big, prosperous northern city, but it voted to leave. And the two universities in Sheffield, like others elsewhere, are now deeply concerned about what comes next.
British universities get around 5% of their students from the EU, around 15% of their staff, and around £800 million a year in research grants. Now, it's possible all of those relationships and flows will continue in the future. But right now, uncertainty is causing real problems for our higher education institutions.
One Vice-Chancellor has broken cover exclusively for Newsnight to reveal a major problem.
In order to secure research funds, our researchers need to bid for projects. You bid competitively, and increasingly in an international environment, you bid in international teams. Since the referendum result, of the 12 projects that we have people working on for submission for an end of August deadlines, on 4 of those projects, researchers in other European countries have said that they no longer feel that the UK should be a partner because they don't have confidence in what the future is going to hold.
3 other Vice-Chancellors have given us similar accounts, as academics here and abroad fear that post-Brexit Britain might be excluded from the EU-run research frameworks.
There are 2 principal risks. One of them is the international engagement that our leading researchers have. The other one is mobility for younger researchers. So for our established researchers, because they're part of international networks at the moment, they not only know what's being published, but they know what's going on at the lab bench with their leading colleagues elsewhere, and they know why decisions are being made about which particular lines of research should be pursued. For the younger researchers, the key thing is the opportunity to work in more than one research environment. So as well as their experience of working in another country, they build up new contacts with those networks, and those then support their research in the future. And we're going to miss out on both of those things.
Now that need not be the case. Norway and Switzerland are out of the EU, but inside the science framework. But the uncertainty is painful, and university research really matters.
We get quite a lot of research funding from the EU across a whole range of areas, and we collaborate with all the EU countries. But one example of this is our Insenio Research Institute, which is looking at how to develop cures for motor neuron disease, for example, and other neurodegenerative disorders. So I think we wouldn't be able to do that research at that level without the funding from the EU.
Now you might be expecting that, but what about this? Stuff that both of Sheffield universities called EU-funded research also supports local high-tech manufacturing jobs.
We've had a big impact. We employ ourselves 560 people. We turn over 50 million a year. We work with British companies and companies in South Yorkshire as part of the supply chain to big companies like Rolls-Royce, Airbus and Boeing. We train 250 apprentices a year with 195 small companies in this region. Those are all good quality jobs.
This sort of work relies on attracting great researchers who can help local businesses develop their offers. But Vice-Chancellors already have case studies of prospective staff deciding not to come to Britain, and they fear losing students.
I'm really comfortable here, but since the last vote, all the people from Spain that they don't know how it's working here, they are quite worried about that. They are quite worried about my situation. They don't really know what could happen to me here. They don't really know if people is still nice or they can be more rude and they don't want us here.
Britain may stay half in the EU science infrastructure. We may take another path. Some Leave campaigners hope to up UK science spend. But academics need to know. For them, this is a particularly chilling interregnum.
Chris Cook there. Well, as if we didn't have enough news to worry about, brace yourselves for tomorrow when the Chilcot inquiry report will be published. Another chance for establishment politicians to take a kicking. The report has been 7 years in the making. Even the summary is 150,000 words. It's not designed to point the finger of blame at the mistakes made. It's designed to document the lessons from the experience of the Iraq War. But of course, some of the lessons we may learn are that certain people are blameworthy. Well, Sir John has been managing expectations of the report ahead of publication today.
The main expectation that I have is that it will not be possible in future to engage in a military or indeed a diplomatic endeavour on such a scale and of such gravity without really careful challenge, analysis and assessment and collective political judgment being applied to it.
Now, our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban, will be locked in a room with a number of other journalists to read the report at 8 a.m. tomorrow, ahead of publication. Sir John Chilcot will talk about his findings at 11, and after he sits down, the journalists can report on anything their speed reading has uncovered. Mark is with me now. Mark, let's start on Tony Blair, which is where a lot of interest is in this, and how the report will handle him and it.
I think there will be a good deal of criticism of Tony Blair and the way he ran this. But if you're after the smoking gun, the key memo that proves he knew that intelligence was false and he lied to the people and Parliament, I don't think that's going to be in there. I think there will be criticisms of the so-called sofa style of government, where Cabinet wasn't fully in the picture, of a certain naivety in going into it, an absence of attention to detail in the post-war planning. But, you know, we may learn some other things about Tony Blair as well, perhaps, that he also realised it was going horribly wrong rather quicker than President Bush did.
What about the criticisms generally? How broad will they go, sort of beyond Tony Blair himself?
I think it's key to understand that dozens of people will be censured explicitly or implicitly by this. Officials, intelligence people who may not have given the right rigour, who may have allowed their work to be processed in a way that was too political, if you follow me, or not sufficiently caveated. But I think the military will be a substantial area of criticism. You know, I think the report will point out that they lobbied for a big role in Iraq. And then, you know, when Afghanistan was spinning up in 2005, 2006, they lobbied for a big role there before the business was finished in Iraq. And all of that influenced the level of resources and equipment and everything else that the military were able to have. So I would expect to see a good deal of criticism of the way the campaign was conducted and the role of senior officers as well as other officials.
OK, Mark, thanks. Mark will, in fact, be sharing his observations on the inquiry with you tomorrow, as soon as Sir John Chilcot stops talking, about 11:30, via Facebook Live. You just go to the BBC News Facebook page and you'll see it there, and you can ask Mark your own questions too. Well, tomorrow's report will encapsulate in prose the mistakes made at the various stages of the war and the suffering of both the Iraqi people and the British servicemen and their families. Here are two of their voices.
My name is Marwa Al-Najjar. In 2003, I was 17 years old and lived in Baghdad.
I am Reg Keyes. I am the father of the late Lance Corporal Tom Keyes, who was killed in Iraq 4 days short of his 21st birthday.
To the run-up of the 2003 war, we were hearing all this information about the different types of bombs that are going to be launched on us, the different types of technology that's going to cause damage to our country. It was just so scary.
At the time, I believed my Prime Minister, Tony Blair, that Iraq had these dreadful weapons of mass destruction that were about to be unleashed upon the British people at any time. Indeed, he could deploy in 45 minutes.
At the start, when the Americans came in, some people were happy. But then that's totally changed straight away when they saw things are getting worse. They're not getting better. We have American flags hanging on palaces. I had once a laser gun on my chest because I was standing in my balcony. Someone in my house holding a gun towards me and saying, "This is freedom, this is democracy."
Conditions were dire. I remember him saying we did a biological weapon attack drill. He said, I put the rubber suit on. This is in stifling heat. These lads were training, fear for their lives, remember that they may well be attacked, when there was actually no danger whatsoever from WMD. But as he put the face mask on, I recall him saying the rubber around the seal just crumbled.
During the invasion, we didn't go to school. School stopped. Everything stopped. Your whole life stopped. We had electricity during the war. I don't know why they waited till the end of the war and they bombed everything. They bombed the TV, they bombed electricity, they bombed telephone lines. Okay, if you've won the war, why are you bombing it and letting people start from zero?
Tom and some of his colleagues were asked to give out sweets to children to win them over. And there was one dreadful incident where two young lads, probably 12 or 13, Tom said, had taken sweets off them and they were grabbed by a mob, taken off, tied to a lamppost and burnt alive as a lesson not to collaborate with the infidel, the invader.
A lot of killings were happening. People were starting getting, there was no law, there was no order, there was no police, there was no army.
The risk of death and serious injury goes along with being a serving soldier. I signed that paperwork for Tom to join the army because he was under 18. I now have to come to terms with this. And I was dealing with that until I started to find out that the weapons of mass destruction didn't exist, that the war was based on a total falsehood and misrepresentation of intelligence data. And then, to my horror, I found out that Tom had no equipment virtually whatsoever, just 50 rounds of ammunition, no working phone, no radio, no distress flares, no smoke grenade, no morphine, no hand grenades.
For a normal citizen living in Iraq at the moment, the Chilcot report will do nothing. Will this report bring security back? Will this report bring electricity back? Will this report make them feel safe?
We want to know exactly why this country went to war with Iraq on the premise of a falsehood of WMD without a second UN resolution. The blood of those that all died in Iraq stained the halls of Westminster. It was a shambolic episode in British politics. It was a disgrace and it should never be allowed to happen again.
2 lives tragically affected by the war in Iraq, and we will be devoting tomorrow's programme to the Chilcot report. Now, the Labour Party is in the grip of a fierce custody battle right now. Constitutionally, it belongs to the members, but the MPs feel they have special rights to it as well, and the two are in a standoff over who should be leader. But while I say it's a standoff, it hasn't actually come to a vote. We just assume that the members would reaffirm their support of Jeremy Corbyn if given the chance. Can we take that for granted? Especially given a surge in new members post-referendum. Well, soon they may be given the chance to vote on a leader, so Lewis Goodall has been travelling the country to sound out their views.
It's in places like Matlock in Derbyshire that the future of the Labour Party is being decided. Meetings of local constituency Labour parties in every corner of the kingdom.
I hope that we're going to have a really, really good debate. I know there's going to be strong opinions on every side.
Before the meeting starts, I have a chance to catch up with some of the members to see whether their support for their leader has soured.
The failure of leadership was for the people around Corbyn, because from the very beginning there were so many media leaks and little bits of things about him not being suitable. But in fact, how can you say he's not suitable? His vision is excellent and so many of us followed him.
Just because a small minority of the party, which is a majority of a faction of the party, which are the MPs, are against him, does not mean he should go.
But aren't the MPs more than just a faction of the party?
No, they are a faction of the party. They are a faction of the party. And if you want to listen to the party and you want members to be involved in the party and you give them the right to join the party or even just pay £3 to have a say in the leadership, you cannot take that away from them because you don't like the decision they've made.
If the Labour MPs feel that the Labour Party is unrepresentative of their views or the views of their constituents, they're perfectly within their rights to refuse the Labour whip.
Even for Corbyn's detractors, it's hard to oppose without an alternative.
Why have we got to second-guess the Parliamentary Labour Party? There are no candidates. There are no credible candidates coming forward.
That they haven't come
yes,
forward?
it does. Yes, it does. There is all this movement against the leader, but nobody is standing up and saying, I can do a better job.
The PLP are acting in a sense of frustration because they are very keen and eager to bring about change and bring about change to help ordinary people.
Is that why they abstained on the welfare bill and why the previous Shadow Chancellor said he would accept some cuts to tax credits?
The person who has been most touted is Angela Eagle. Do any of you have much enthusiasm for an Eagle candidacy?
Not at all. I don't think the Labour Party should return to New Labour style.
I also don't think we should have a return to the days of Michael Foot and have a split in the party, which led to the SDP. And we haven't got an alternative candidate out yet. Owen Smith's name is also being touted as well. So let's wait and see.
Owen Smith? Would there be more support, do you think, for Owen Smith?
No.
There's not a vacancy.
Well,
we've got a leader, and the leader has said he's staying put.
The Labour Party isn't about one man, and we need, in order to be able to do that job effectively, then Jeremy Corbyn needs the support of his MPs, and it seems that he doesn't have that.
In the event of another leadership election, how many of you think that Jeremy Corbyn would likely win? And in the event of another leadership election, how many of you think you would likely vote for him yourself? Many of their comrades agree. During the meeting, 3 motions were put down in support of Jeremy Corbyn. All 3 were overwhelmingly carried. All of the motions here passed tonight were in favour of the leader, but maybe the people who will determine the next leader of the Labour Party aren't the people here at all, but the people joining the party to vote against Jeremy Corbyn.
It was.
The rebels have to hope there are lots of people out there like Erica and her daughter Amy from Cleethorpes. They're 2 of the 60,000 people who have joined the party since the referendum. They've never been a member of a party before, but are joining Labour now to vote for anyone but Corbyn.
I've always voted. I think it's very important to vote. But I feel that the party that I normally vote for isn't there anymore. And I feel that the next election I wouldn't know who to vote for. Just generally feels like Momentum have got the car keys and they've gone for a joyride and they're not letting us have the car back. And they'd rather drive it off a cliff than give up power, because this is their moment. I read that so many people are joining and Momentum say it's to join to vote for Corbyn, and I know I joined to vote against Corbyn, and I think he'll hang on, and I think it'll be the end of the party. I think it could split the party because people like me that traditionally always vote Labour won't vote for Jeremy Corbyn in the next election.
Will you vote for him in the next election?
No.
Who would you vote for instead?
That's a tough one. I don't think I could vote Tory. I think it would have to be the Lib Dems because I use my vote. I think it's very important to vote, and I feel that I don't have anyone to vote for.
And you've always voted Labour?
Always voted Labour.
But the other side are entrenched and expanding too. Patrick Smith is secretary of Hull North Labour Party and a Momentum organiser.
Since the coup was launched last week, we've seen more than 30 members a day joining, so we're growing pretty rapidly, and I'd say that's all thanks to Jeremy Corbyn.
Do you think it's fair to say that Labour is in a state of civil war right now?
Absolutely. I mean, how could you describe it any other way? But it's the MPs who've gone to war with the membership, not the membership who've gone to war with the MPs.
And do you feel like you're going to win in that war?
Yeah. There's a lot more of us than there is of them.
Lewis Goodall there. Well, if the Labour Party is in a state of civil war, as Lewis suggests, is it perhaps time to just call the whole thing off, for the party to split into its 2 component wings? Separating is all the fashion at the moment, after all. Now, there were 2 influential political columnists today, one in the Times, one in the Financial Times, both suggesting that this is no longer an unthinkable option. Proponents hate to call it an SDP Mark II, but would it work and should it work? Well, I'm joined by the former Business Secretary, Vince Cable, of the Lib Dems, Aisha Hazarika, who worked for Ed Miliband, and Harriet Harman, and the journalist and author Rachel Shabby, and a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, I think we can say, Rachel. Can I just start with you, Aisha? Have you had any conversations or heard any conversations about the idea of there being some breakaway or some split?
So I've spoken to a number of MPs and people around the Labour Party today, and certainly there's lots of talk about it. It's in the zeitgeist, but I think as much as it's trendy to talk about a conscious uncoupling, I think actually people's heart are not in it. Even though this is a very difficult time for the Labour Party, whether you call it civil war, whether you call it an impasse, I think actually people's hearts are for sticking with the Labour Party. Neil Kinnock made a very impassioned speech at Monday night's meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party. And I think people feel that if the Labour Party was to split now, there might be a short kind of feel-good sort of factor, but actually it would do us real damage on a long, ongoing basis and probably deliver a right-wing government for decades.
Can I just ask, though, I mean, we've sat, I don't know whether we've deliberately sat you in these seats or not, but you are closer to Vince Cable. Like, you're this far from Vince Cable, and you're this far from Jeremy Corbyn, aren't you? You are much closer. You're much closer to Vince Cable than Jeremy Corbyn, right? I mean, just.
But do you know, actually, I'm going to push back on that. I think at the moment, the impasse we've got is not so much an ideological divide. I think lots of people are actually very welcoming of Jeremy's politics, you know, social justice, equality. They're of their time, particularly his anti-austerity rhetoric. It's about the quality of his leadership. That's the issue that people have. It's not an ideological divide, it's about leadership.
Right. Vince Cable, close, I know, to Aisha.
I think probably, yes, that's the honest answer.
Yeah. What would your advice be to those 100, 150, 170 Labour MPs who are deeply dissatisfied with their leader and look like they'll be stuck with him because the party constitution will impose him upon them?
The present situation is not sustainable, and if they stagger on as they are, they're going to be massacred at the next election. And I think we are looking, for the first time for decades, at fundamental realignment. And I think it's more likely to happen now because the bonds of the voters to their parties have gradually eroded, and people, I think, are much more open to it. But it can happen in one of two ways. There are two scenarios, really, which is one is that my party rises from the ashes. You know, we're already growing rapidly again, and we then attract individuals, probably, from the Labour Party, and some Tories, too. And it becomes a genuine centre movement. The alternative is that the Labour Party splits. You get a large chunk of not just old Social Democrats, but, you know, centrist-type Labour people. They become the centre of activity and the anti-Tory front, and they try to work with us, the Greens and others. There are two different ways in which this could happen. I think one of them will happen.
Right, but I mean, there's a huge difference because one of them is a left-wing thing, and another is a centrist thing. And those are, and I know people have been talking about these models as though they're all one and the same. And
they're quite different.
They are quite different. Okay, Rachel, and I don't know whether you're a paid-up member of Labour or a paid-up Corbyn supporter, but I know you're more sympathetic to him. What do you feel when you hear Vince Cable outline those two potential paths?
Well, I think I'm more inclined to agree with Aisha on this, in the sense that I don't think the Labour Party really wants to split. I think the people who have been having problems with Corbyn and voted against him, when it comes down to it, don't really want to split the party. I mean, it wouldn't be in their interest to split and, you know, go alone and be a small independent faction without the funding and the organisational mechanisms and all the backing of the Labour Party. And I think that you know, it wasn't that great that the vote of no confidence was carried out in a secret ballot, but one of the advantages of that is that we don't need to know. Nobody need ever know who voted how, so that in the, hopefully, forthcoming reconciliation process, there is a way back. There is a way to talk to Corbyn and find a way to resolve these issues. But Len McCluskey and Unite have already offered to mediate. They are professionally mediating.
You mean with Corbyn there, though, don't you? You're not really talking about, let's save the party, so my side will step down.
No. I am talking about save the party. But one of the major things about saving the party is saving the democratic processes of that party. But you can't suddenly throw them in the air because you don't like the leader, because if you throw away the democratic process, you've also thrown away the party.
Although, I mean, the members are incredibly important, but the Labour Party is a union between the members and the people who are elected to Parliament by their constituents, the public, and MPs do lots of good work in Parliament. We've talked a lot about that over the last 3 weeks, particularly in the light of Joe Cox. So the members are important, but the Labour Party is not just a pressure group. We have got to think about the next general election. We've got to think about winning seats, not just stacking up a share of the vote.
It's really starting to grate the
seats.
implication that the people who support Corbyn are not interested in winning elections. Of course we're interested in elections. Of course we're interested in power. That's what we're in it for. We want to see progressive change. We want an anti-austerity platform. Now, we might disagree about the mechanisms, but there is a process. There is a democratic process the party has.
We have to win power. We need a good leader.
What amazes me about this whole discussion, I mean, the country is in a massive crisis right now. I mean, enormous. We've not had this in my lifetime. And we also desperately need a coherent opposition to face the government, you know, whether it's in Parliament or in a fresh election. And as long as the Labour Party is immersed in this totally navel-gazing, inward-looking debate, you know, that problem cannot be confronted. They've really just got to start looking outward.
They absolutely do.
And they will not survive if they don't.
You're absolutely right, Vince. And I think look, I get the impression from MPs, I think you and I are in agreement, Rachel. I don't think we want the party to split. I think that there would be a very heavy price to pay for that. And there's one man that can stop that, and that is Jeremy Corbyn.
But basically, you're both saying we agree we don't want the party to split, so I want your side to give way to my side. That's
no,
basically...
I'm asking for the democratic process to be respected.
Yeah, but which is another way of saying keep Corbyn,
but
and you're
really,
saying the MPs
because if the situation was reversed, I would still be saying the same thing. The question is, would they?
Let me ask you, Rachel, just would you expect people to say stuff they do not believe out of loyalty or support for Jeremy Corbyn? Would Jeremy Corbyn do that? Would he just stick by a leader, come what may, however useless they thought he was?
But that's the thing, isn't it? Because when it comes down to it, and you know, what is it? What are the policies that these MPs disagree with Corbyn on? What is it about this
platform? It's not an ideological...
So it's not,
it's competence.
If it's not ideological...
It's competence and it's leadership. It's basically like when you go for your next appraisal, Evan, you can't just say to the BBC, look, I think I'm brilliant, even though I'm sure everyone will think you're brilliant, but you can't just declare that you're brilliant. And when you win the majority, when you win the leadership of the Labour Party, you win the right to lead, you win an opportunity to lead. You don't win a divine right to fail and then cling on and then destroy the party.
I want to bring Vincent on this issue, because, Vince, the story of the SDP haunts this debate.
Yes.
And I just want, because you were there, you were involved.
I was.
Do you think of it as being a success, or what lessons would you draw from the SDP?
Well, there are superficial similarities. Some of the personalities are the same. You know, Jeremy Corbyn was a big figure in North London Labour at that time. You know, Europe was haunting in the background. But the big difference is, of course, the way the parties have changed. The old tribal loyalties, certainly at the grassroots, have gone. It was, from the point of view of Labour activists, it was a failure because Tories continued in power. But actually, in a deeper sense, it probably was successful. It forced the Labour Party to confront electability. And so you had Neil Kinnock and then John Smith and eventually Blair, who made the Labour Party a highly successful party of government until, you know, Iraq War and all the other things. But if the SDP hadn't happened, it would have been much more difficult to achieve that.
Well, we'll see whether there is a split. I mean, Aisha, prediction, you predicting is going to happen? 2 seconds.
I think the Labour Party will fight to reconcile and get some kind of marriage counselling sorted out. That's my hope.
Yeah, I think marriage counselling is the way forward. Absolutely.
If there aren't irreconcilable differences. Thank you all very much. Now, before we go, it's the biggest day in Welsh football history tomorrow as they take on Portugal in the semi-final of the European Championships. To get you in the mood, here's former national poet of Wales, Gillian Clarke, who's recorded a special version of her poem, The Stadium, just for us. It's now called The Match. Good night.
The legend goes like this. The land is cold and bare, when the people wake to a strange new hope, and a mood of devil-may-care. There is one with a silver boot, and one with a raptor's stare, and all of them young and strung with steel and ready for do and dare. There is one with the speed of a hound, and one with the heart of a hare, and millions to surge and urge them on to fly on a wing and a prayer. The cloud lifts from the land, the sun stands in the air. When the ball goes straight through the golden gate like a comet with streaming hair, the bells will ring and the people sing, and we will all be there.